Have you ever pondered how hunger can shape the course of human history? It's a sobering thought, isn't it? A stark reminder of our vulnerability to the forces of nature and the consequences of human folly. Today we're going to delve into the profound impact of famines, those tragic episodes of mass starvation that have punctuated our shared history. Famines are an uninvited guest at the table of civilization. They've been with us from the dawn of time, lurking in the shadows, ready to strike when we least expect it. And when they do, they leave an indelible mark, reshaping societies, toppling empires, and rewriting the course of history. But here's a crucial point to understand. Famines are not simply natural disasters. They're often the result of human actions, policies, or even indifference. They are a damning testament to our capacity to inflict suffering on our fellow humans, whether through incompetence, negligence, or deliberate cruelty. Consider this. A drought may wither the crops, but it's the absence of effective response, the failure to distribute resources equitably, or the prioritization of political agendas over human lives that turns a crisis into a catastrophe. And the effects of famines go far beyond the immediate tragedy of lives lost. They have profound long-term impacts, triggering social upheaval, economic collapse, and political instability. They scar the collective memory of a people, influencing their culture, their attitudes, and their destiny for generations to come. In the upcoming scenes, we'll delve deeper into this grim subject, examining some of the most devastating famines in human history. We'll explore their causes, their consequences, and the lessons we can learn from them. We'll see how the specter of famine has loomed large over our past, shaping our societies and altering the course of history. As we delve into this dark facet of our past, we'll discover how the specter of famine has shaped societies and altered the course of history. We begin our journey in the 14th century with the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317. In the early decades of the 1300s, Europe was a continent on the rise, but this upward trajectory was soon to be interrupted. The cause? A series of adverse weather conditions that set off a chain of events leading to what is now known as the Great Famine. The weather turned, quite literally, against the people. An unending cycle of cold, rain, and even snow during the summer months wreaked havoc on the agricultural rhythms that communities depended on. Crops failed, harvests were lost, and the primary source of sustenance for the majority of the population was abruptly cut off. As the food supplies dwindled, the prices skyrocketed. A loaf of bread, a staple of the medieval diet, became a luxury few could afford. The famine's grip tightened, and widespread starvation set in. But hunger was only the first wave of the catastrophe. The weakened bodies of the populace fell prey to disease, with epidemics spreading like wildfire. The Black Death, one of the most devastating pandemics in human history, found fertile ground in the malnourished and weakened bodies of the people. Social unrest followed closely on the heels of disease. With survival at stake, communities were torn apart. The bonds of society frayed and snapped, leading to violence, crime, and even reports of cannibalism. The Great Famine was not merely a disaster of hunger and illness. It was a catastrophe that shook the very foundations of medieval society. It exposed the fragility of the agrarian economy, the vulnerability of societies heavily dependent on a single crop, and the devastating potential of climate change. The Great Famine, a grim reminder of our vulnerability to nature's whims, set the stage for the tumultuous centuries to follow. It demonstrated in stark terms the thin line that separates prosperity from disaster, survival from extinction. As we journey through history, let us bear in mind the lessons of the Great Famine, for they still hold relevance in our world today. Fast forward to 1770, when the Indian subcontinent was gripped by the Great Bengal Famine. The famine's roots can be traced back to a lethal combination of natural calamities and man-made disasters. At the heart of it all was the British East India Company, a colonial entity that had taken control of Bengal in 1757. The company's policies were designed to maximize profit, often at the expense of the local population. High taxation, coupled with a lack of investment in agricultural infrastructure, left the region vulnerable to the whims of nature. Imagine the dire situation when a severe drought hit Bengal in 1769. Crops failed, rivers dried up, and the land that was once lush and green turned into a desolate wasteland. The British East India Company, however, remained indifferent to the unfolding disaster. Their focus was on maintaining revenue flow, and they continued to levy high taxes, forcing the already struggling farmers to sell their seeds and cattle. As the famine worse. Our next stop is mid-19th century Ireland, the time and place of the infamous potato famine. Picture a green land turned desolate, a lifeline gone, and a population plunged into despair. This was Ireland during the period from 1845 to 1852. The root cause of this catastrophe was a humble organism, a fungus known as Phytophthora infestans, but commonly referred to as the potato blight. This deadly disease swept across Ireland's potato fields, turning the vital crop into a mass of blackened, rotting mush. For the Irish, who heavily depended on the potato as their primary food source, this was a disaster of unimaginable proportions. But the blight was not the sole culprit. British policies played a significant role in the severity of the famine. Prior to the famine, British landlords had forced Irish farmers onto smaller and smaller plots, where they became increasingly reliant on the easy-to-grow potato. When the blight struck, these farmers had no fallback. Moreover, Britain's laissez-faire approach to the economy meant that food continued to be exported from Ireland even as its people starved. The British government's relief efforts were too little, too late, and often mismanaged. The result was a tragedy of epic proportions. The effects of the famine on the Irish population were devastating. Mass starvation and disease claimed the lives of around 1 million people, while another million emigrated, many to the United States, in a desperate search for a better life. The famine left deep scars on the Irish psyche. It became emblematic of the Irish struggle against British rule, and it forever changed the demographic landscape of Ireland. The population of Ireland still hasn't recovered to its pre-famine level, and the diaspora has left a lasting Irish imprint on many corners of the globe. The Irish potato famine, a heart-wrenching example of the peril of monoculture, forever changed the demographic landscape of Ireland and beyond. This poignant chapter in human history serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of diversity and equity in our food systems. As we reflect on these tragic chapters of our history, we are reminded of the profound impact of famines. The Great Famine of the early 14th century, the Great Bengal Famine of the late 18th century, and the Irish potato famine of the mid-19th century all bear witness to the devastating consequences of food shortage. Each of these events, though separated by centuries and continents, share common threads that weave a somber tapestry of human suffering and resilience. In each case, the famines were not merely the result of poor harvests or natural disasters, but were exacerbated by human actions and policies. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 was precipitated by a period of climate change, but it was the economic and social structures of the time that failed to respond adequately, leaving millions to starve. The Great Bengal Famine was similarly precipitated by a natural disaster, but it was the policies of the East India Company that exacerbated the crisis, leading to the deaths of millions. The Irish potato famine, too, was not just a natural disaster, but a failure of governance, with the British government's policies exacerbating the crisis and leading to widespread death and emigration. These famines also highlight the vulnerability of societies to natural disasters. Whether it was a changing climate, a cyclone, or a potato blight, these events laid bare the fragility of our food systems and the urgent need for resilience. But perhaps the most enduring lesson from these famines is their lasting impact on societies. The demographic, social, and political changes that these famines wrought continue to resonate today, shaping the societies that emerged from these crises. Famines, while a dark and painful aspect of our past, serve as potent reminders of our collective resilience and our ongoing struggle for food security. In remembering these events, we honor the countless lives lost and reaffirm our commitment to ensuring that such tragedies are not repeated. We are reminded of our shared humanity, our shared vulnerability, and our shared responsibility to one another.